for me is I started to do testing with transmission control. Results were erratic. I don't know if I've stripped a gear in my servo or there was an electrical problem. So I have pulled my transmission servo off the device, ordered 2 new servos, also ordered 3.2 Teensies plus the STM card, and was going to basically start again because I don't know whether it's electronics or stripping the gears out, but it doesn't seem to be well. It's not a stable stable performance. So when I take it off of the machine, don't put it under load, it will obviously move. But if I put any load on it whatsoever, I think I must have stripped the gear out. So, which is odd because I've only got a 5 amp fuse on the circuit, and I would have thought, you know, anything, I wouldn't have thought 5 amps of power would have stripped the gears.
So. How do you know that they're stripped?
I don't. I mean, I haven't tried to take it apart or anything. But it does, like, it gives this sort of jerkiness when you know, I try to drive it to a point that it requires stress to get to that point. So I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing that it's they got a physical thing going on, or I initially thought that it was a signal problem. So I took it off the machine and tested it, and no, it was operating perfectly fine using the same electronics as if it were installed in the metal brackets that I used to install it. So I mean, literally, it was disconnected from the transmission, sitting on the lawn tractor, still connected up electronically with all of the same connections, and it would, sweep back and forth. But on the tractor, it won't. It tries to move and then starts this jerkiness. And I was looking at the screws on the device. Have you ever taken the gearbox part apart? I didn't know if those were security screws or just small Allen wrenches. Have you ever disassembled a super servo?
I have taken off that back, and they are Allen. I did it by mistake and ended up, because I wanted to come into the top, but I've done it a couple times. I haven't opened up that gearbox piece of it.
Because I've opened up the back part, the electronics part. I've not opened up the gearbox part.
Yeah.
So hopefully, and I also bought a suitcase scale, something that you would weigh a suitcase with. And so I was going to configure up a test bench and, see what sort of results I could get by testing it on a suitcase scale. Again, not trying to overly drive it, just step into it slowly to see how many amps it's drawing and how many pounds it's pulling. And I've come to realize there are at least 3 models of the Super Servo that I've found: a 200, a 300, and a 500. I don't know if you recall, Matt, which one you're using exactly.
The 200.
Yeah, so you're having good luck with the 200. And if you had to judge the distance between the center of the shaft and where you're connecting the control rod how many millimeters or inches or whatever, how wide is that span?
It's about an inch. Again, these are really not accurate. I haven't measured it. It's
Yeah,
about
so mine was about 3 inches. So the leverage, 3 inches away from that shaft is going to give one, level of performance. You're 1 inch, and it's working for you at 1 inch. So I may end up having to get down closer to, the actual shaft. So a little bit of electronics, a little bit of mechanical engineering. So that's where I'm at. My weekend will be spent trying to get my transmission control servo working and behaving like yours.
Are you seeing the jitter or the erratic movement when you're driving directly to the servo, or are you going through another microcontroller and then to the servo?
The second.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing that I wanted to do, is to take out that second servo and interact with it directly instead of through the second servo. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some weird things that I don't know about. That's just like the PWM. You're driving it through a PWM, which is a digital signal, and the TC is going to be a 3.3 device, and that servo is a 5-volt device, and it should work. But I didn't know if it's because it's really noisy, if you need some sort of like bi-directional level shifter. I looked on SparkFun for those, and they were saying the hertz can be a problem. Like, I can't remember what the max rate is. Yeah. So I don't know what's causing the noise on our system. Howard from Virginia Tech had some pretty cool those opto isolators and some of those other filters on his system that we may need to add. They had like filters on each of the motor drives and then opto isolators on each of their external connections.
I have some little opto isolator boards that I made, and I'll dig those out this weekend and see what I have, how many I have. I think I got a whole pile of them, and I'll have to see which parts I put on them. So I'll pull those out and have those available to test things with.
Matt, did you happen to see a wiring diagram of where they put those?
Yeah, he said he'll give a presentation if we're interested in that. And I think we are noise on a system is a problem. So any way we can filter that out or clean that up. Jeff, do you have any idea about like sending a PWM command from a 3.3 device to a 5-volt device? I know they're digital signals and they should be able to read, and mine appears to work, but I didn't know if it was like temperamental or, not stable.
It could be that it could be temperamental, but generally if it switches, if you've got 3.3 driving a 5 and it's switching, then probably it's okay. But if you've got extra noise on the line, then it may be worse because of that. So various ways around that, you could put a level translator next to your 3.3 volt device, just convert it from 3.3 to the 5 volts and then send it across your wire. Or you could put something at the other end, say at the servo end, and at that point, take the incoming line of 3.3 and convert it to 5 volts. But it might be worth just an experiment to see if it improves anything. And if not, then there's no sense adding the extra parts in there, I would think.
Well, I've got it apart, and was going to do some testing. I guess the first test I'll do is on a desk check with the luggage scale, seeing if I get the jitter off the device, using the luggage scale as a little bit of stress, and just slowly seeing how much, see if I can get to that 40 pounds. I recall, Matt, you mentioning, and I tested it myself, about, it appears to be about 40 pounds of torque to make that transmission arm move. So that appears to be the goal of how much torque to apply.
Yep. On my transmission, there's multiple holes on that lever, so you can test different, I guess, ways you want to mount that rod.
And I'm on the top hole because my assumption was, from a physics standpoint, being on the top hole is the least, gives the most leverage, and therefore the least amount of torque required to make it move. Are you on the top hole, or are you on the next hole?
I'm not the top hole.
So that's where I'm at. Sorry I missed the meeting Tuesday. Jeff, welcome. Anything you want to comment on today?
I don't think I've got a whole lot done. I mounted a metal plate on the top of my roll bar, so I've got a control panel. So I've got an e-stop switch on that, and that battery monitor meter that I was showing off one time. I can't remember what else I've done. Oh, I went through this exercise with my batteries and thought, well, I'll take out the big 12-volt battery and put in two smaller 12-volt batteries so I could run a 24-volt system. When I got it apart, it turns out the hole that I've got for a battery to go in, I don't have any batteries to fit in there unless I get one of these. I've got these that I think they're only 4 amp hour batteries, so that'd be a pretty drastic decrease in power capacity if I put those in. But after I got it all put together, I went ahead and wired it up at 24 volts, and that didn't seem to solve my problem either. So I just put the big 12-volt battery back in it. So I need to play with that some more and see what's going on there. I still may have to go back and hot rod my RC servo to make it work better. So I've been putting that off because it's just one more thing to have to do. So I'm going to try to just use it the way it is for the moment. Oh, and another
One thing I thought of. Go ahead.
Another thing that came up was the fact that somebody came in and said, "Oh, we're going to send your Novatel GPS down to Ames. They're going to put it on a device down there." And it turns out that hemisphere compass that we had, it was on loan, so we sent that back. So all my commercial GPSs are gone now. So I'm back to my U-Blocks parts that I can play with if I decide to do anything on that. So that's all I had, I think.
Jeff, you were mentioning there's a lot of slop in your steer system, and I didn't understand where that's coming from. My servo motor, there is no backlash. I shouldn't say no backlash. Again, I didn't measure it, but just like messing around with it, it doesn't seem to move.
Well, when I get the whole thing put together with my whole steering setup and I wiggle the wheels back and forth, I can see that there's slop somewhere. And when I look at it, it looks like the actual shaft on the servo is wiggling around a little bit. And it's, if you just sitting there looking at it, you wouldn't notice that. But after connected into everything there, and as it's trying to move the wheels, then it just becomes more obvious at that point.
I listened to one webinar, and this guy said you need to have at least 1 degree, a resolution of 1 degree on your steer system. I don't know how true that is, but that's what they were going for.
Did he mention how they came up with that, or you just thought that seems like a good idea?
Yeah, good idea.
Because I think right now the other problem I have is the fact that the servo doesn't have enough gain. So if I say go to a certain angle, it doesn't really do that. It's, as the one article pointed out, the guy said it's off by about 10 degrees, and without modifying it, that's probably what I'm going to get. And then I could take the position out of the servo, but I haven't gone to the trouble to go inside and solder a wire onto that yet. But that'd be another thing I could experiment with just to see how well it's tracking. If nothing else, you can say set it to an angle, and then whatever the angle coming back is, send that back to Ross and say, for my odometry, this is the real angle it's at. So regardless of what it's set to, the calculations will be done on the actual angle of the steering. And if I get that position signal out, then I could just run it back through a microcontroller and actually just run it as a motor, and I could improve that angle tracking immensely by doing that.
So they're saying that you could get up to a 10-degree if you're like the relative angle, like if you tell it to move 15 degrees or 30 degrees, it may not move 30 degrees. It may move like 28 degrees or 25 degrees.
Exactly.
But when I was playing around with it, it will always go back to that 25 degrees.
Is that under load or is that not under load?
That's a good question. I don't know.
It's going to act differently depending whether it's loaded or not.
Okay.
But I had that little servo tester with the knob on it, and I could turn that knob back and forth quite a bit, just turning it. I thought, well, it's not tracking. Ideally, like I say, you just turn the knob just a little tiny bit, and the servo follows that, but it really doesn't. So that's my first indication that I had a problem. That was just totally unloaded. I'd turn it quite a ways, and then the servo would kind of start up and then follow it, and it would stop short of where it's supposed to be. So just in general, it's just a matter of playing with it and see where the downside is. And it could be from one unit to the other, depending when you buy these things. Some of them might work better than others too. And I only have the one, so I can't really compare them to anything else.
And I've always been using it like a motor, so I'm controlling to a position from an external sensor, and that's not the same.
That's what you're doing on your transmission right now?
Yeah. I originally set that up for steering, and I couldn't get the width that I needed. So I moved that back to the throttle. But both cases, I'm always using it like a motor.
What did you end up using for a position sensor on your transmission?
I use those pickup sensors. I've got a gear with tooth gear and a pickup sensor that measures the rotation of each of the wheels. And
so you're not controlling the position of the transmission arm at all, then you're just simply saying, based on the speed, either give it more or less.
Yeah, go 1 meter per
control.
second, and then I read the wheel speed. If it needs more power, give it more power.
Are those wheel sensors pretty reliable? Did you always get a decent signal out of it?
It's pretty robust. It's just the resolution is pretty small. So there's only 30 teeth on those gears, and then the hertz, only getting measurements about 5 hertz. So what I do is I collect how many ticks per 200 milliseconds, and so I'm only getting a read every 5 hertz. So like in the future, maybe a gear with 60 teeth, would give us 10 hertz. We would double our resolution if that's a problem. So far, the speed has been pretty good. Like you just tell it to go 1 meter per second, and then it goes, pretty close to 1 meter per second. Again, these are like rough estimates and not like totally perfect and accurate.
Okay, I just assume you're setting the position of the servo and then expecting the thing to go at whatever that ratio is.
It changes based on terrain. If I'm in the grass or dirt or pavement.
And it's been such a long time since I've run my garden tractor. I can't say if I'm going up a hill or down a hill if that affects the speed of it. So it's when I pull it out here one of these days, I'll have to try that and see how that thing's acting. But I assume it's going to act just like yours does. I assume it's all the same, basically the same transmission on all the different brands.
Yep.
When you said you're using that as a motor, did you go in and solder the little jumper that says continuous rotation or whatever? Is that how you're doing that?
No, I didn't. So that would, maybe be a better way. If you solder that, the only thing I didn't like about the servo motor is that it defaults to that end position when you apply power, and so you don't want unintended motion. If we go with continuous movement, would that take that away? Right now, the way I'm doing it is instead of going 300 degrees, I shrunk it down to 180. So I just have 180. And the disc that I'm using is about 2 inches wide, or where I mounted is about 2 inches wide. So a 180 spin is about 2 inches of travel on my arm. And that's all I needed for that transmission lever arm or whatever. I need 1.5 inches forward to go forward and 0.5 inch to move backwards.
So I assume if you put it in continuous rotation, instead of going all the way to one end, what it's going to do is start rotating at whatever speed that would be equivalent to. So it's going to say start turning backwards at whatever that maximum speed is. Now I did notice on mine, mine doesn't seem to automatically go to one end when I first turn it on. It seems to be whether I have a signal hooked up or not. And it could be if the line coming in is low, then it will do that, or if the line is high, it'll do that. But I hadn't noticed that it's real consistent. I noticed if I start wiggling the wire on there, then all of a sudden it does say, okay, I'm going to go all the way to the one end and stop there. So that was something else odd I noticed about it.
Yeah, like if you supply it a signal, a position signal, and then it powers up, it won't move. It'll go to that position.
But I think I noticed then if I yank the wire off when it's in that position, it doesn't automatically go to the end. Sometimes it will and sometimes it won't. And
Right.
I'm not quite sure why.
Right.
It could be if you put a resistor on it, either pull it high or pull it low. So when you pull that wire off, it might be happier in that situation. It might just sit there and not move if you do that. But then you got so many other things in between. If you got other microcontrollers in between, and then you got the main microcontroller, you don't know where you're going to lose the signal. So that maybe is not the complete answer to that. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, I wish you guys knew the answers so that I could just do it this weekend.
It's all experimental.
That's exactly right. Jeff, a couple of things. The battery voltage meter that you're using, did you just get a simple one from, that what's that?
MPJA.
Yeah, is it MPJA or
I'll see if I can find the one that I've got here. It says it's a programmable one, which means you can run it on a 12-volt system or a 24-volt system. And I like the fact you can do that. So many you get them that says it's for a 12-volt battery, and that's not really, then if you're running on something else, you don't really have the option for that. So let's see if I can find it here.
And besides using an oscilloscope or a digital voltage meter, has anybody ever electronically tracked ohms being used by one of their motors? I'm sorry, amps being used?
You can get these cute little Hall effect sensors that you basically just put it in line with your device, and then it generates a voltage, so you can read that with an A to D or something. That'd be one way, or you can put a big resistor in series and read that with an A to D. So there's different ways to measure the current on that.
Any suggested approach?
Well, I guess it depends on what you have available and what you want to do. What is it you're trying to do? You're trying to keep from burning something up, or you just want to track it over time to know how much power you're using, or?
A little of both. I mean, the immediate question would be, hey, how many amps am I drawing if I pull 40 pounds of torque? And the next one would be a safety measure. Don't stop whatever you're doing if you go over, say, 5 amps of current draw.
Yeah. Well, as far as the battery monitor, I just found. Let's see, where did it go? This one. So I'm using this one, and I got it on sale, so it was like $6.95 or $7.95 or something at the time when I ordered it. And basically, he's got a little video you can watch there of how it works. And you put power on it, it's got a backlight that lights up, and it tells you the voltage, and it tells you the percentage of the battery. And then if you want, you can, by monkeying with the push buttons on it, you can set it for a 12 volt or a 24 volt or 36 volt system. And then if you want, you can calibrate the voltage up and down if it's not doing exactly what you want. And I just got that one because it was, the main fact, it was programmable. And it's also got the little bar graph on there that shows you the shows you your percentage of battery. And the main thing I'm going to use it for is just a basically a power on indicator. So when I turn on the main power, that's going to light up so I know it's on. And then at a glance, you can tell, how good your battery's doing. So that's why I chose that one. That's why I put that one on there.
Cool. The other comment I was going to make, speaking of batteries, I've never tried it, but I wondered if I could do it in order to save space on mine. Believe it or not, Walmart, they have these lithium-ion jump starter batteries for like $45, 600 amps. And you could recharge it with either 12 volt or 110 volt. The notion would be, hey, would a lawn tractor start with this thing, and then would it recharge and save me some space, save me some weight? And so anyway, that if you're looking for an alternative battery, that might be an idea as well.
I'm not sure those will charge right off the 12 volt system. They weren't meant to do that, so I don't know if that would work to put it in as your main battery or not. I think it's meant you turn the thing on and it supplies power while the thing's running. When you're done, you turn it off. And I don't think when you charge it that it's meant to charge back through the same electrical system.
Yeah, you could be right. I mean, if you Google Everstart 600 amp jump starter, you'll see in their picture that 12 volt, cord, but you're right. They could be hoping you're not necessarily putting it in a loop, right?
We've got a couple of those here that some other brand, and basically it's set up, it's got a switch on it. So to use it, you have to hold the button and say turn it on and turn on the 12 volt mode. And that's kind of why I was saying that, I'm not sure it's going to work to directly hook it in. I think Kyler was trying to do it. He had found some lithium-ion battery. He was trying to wire that into his electrical system, and I don't remember. He burned up a couple of things, I think, but so he might have a little more information on that.
Yeah, I was more interested in saving the space, and at the end of the day, plugging the thing into 110 volt. But again, not sure if it would survive the whole. If you were cutting grass, in my mind, for whatever 4 hours. Anyway, yeah. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I'm looking at. I did Google that. I'm looking at it right now, and I see it does have a cord that you plug in your cigarette lighter to charge it. But it as far as trying to put it in and have it charge while it's running, I'm not sure that's what it's designed for. So
could very well be. Sohin, are you out there? Anything going on in your world you want to comment on?
Yes, I'm here. I've just been listening to what you guys been discussing about. I was able to complete the design for the PCB board, which I just shared on Slack on the Lawn Tractor channel, and then that's what I've been doing for the past few evenings, and just been reading a lot of things about pad planning and stuff. It's interesting. It's a big problem. It's a really hard and big problem. So we're all trying to solve it, I guess. But on the PCB design part, I had to switch. I just decided to switch to Eagle because they were offering a free version of it. Eagle was free, and then Autodesk bought it. Uh, so now it's not free, but it's like a freemium version of the software. And I can share a screen here for you to, evaluate it. Here, share screen. Can you see it?
It's coming up now.
Yeah. Sorry, it's might be too. Yeah. So this is the Eagle software by Autodesk now, and I set up the thing, and then now I have a board, and I get this error, but it says it's not consistent. So I'm trying to fix that. But for now, I have a board, and it's all connected, and uh, you set up 4 of your JSN SR04T devices and put like hook up an Arduino Nano here, and then hook up a 5-volt supply with at least I would say 1.5 amps, and it should fire it up. We have the software for this. It seems to work. So yeah, we'll have an ultrasonic system for obstacle avoidance on there. And if it sees an obstacle, it's just gonna keep sending 0 CMD value to the mux, and on the mux, it's set to the highest priority. So if this one, or well, the second priority, the highest priority is your control from from the from the remote control, your manual controller. So that's the first priority, and then the second priority is this one. After the CMD well from the planner. So if the planner's sending something, and if you're on auto mode, the tractor is going to move as planned. And then uh, if it sees something, it's just this nano is going to keep sending a 0 CMD well, and the mux will take care of it, saying that, hey, I'm not receiving any manual signals, and I'm receiving a signal from this guy. So it's just going to keep sending 0 CMD well, and the tractor won't move, even though it should, as per the plan. But it won't move because it sees an obstacle. So yeah, it's coming along, I guess.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
And so for somebody who, if somebody wanted to like teach themselves to do this, would you say use Eagle now?
Well, I don't think I'm qualified to say that. I, I was being lazy in learning that software, and Eagle seemed to have a video on the website that showed me how to do stuff. So I was just trying to get things done rather than trying to learn and teach. So no, I don't. I would recommend to just do more research into it if they want to do something. And if not, if someone's trying to just do this, then just use this if it works. We're gonna do some more testing, but yeah, my approach to this was really uh, an unorthodox in terms of engineering. It was just get it done approach, kind of like a maker approach, I would say.
Cool. I'm going to mark you down then as an Eagle guy.
It's easier, I guess, because it's much more mature as a software. So
Does it do simulation also?
I have no idea. So, sorry, yeah, I just used the bare minimum to get this thing out there, and we'll see. I'll experiment it, and I'll let you know. I'm, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on this.
I posted a link to a box. I was wondering if anybody has any suggestions on enclosures with cheap connectors. So this box is pretty cheap. It's like $11 or $10, and you can get a printed circuit board that connects the outside pins into your electronics. So something like this system, we could plug in each of the ultrasonic sensors and then have like a little module that's waterproof that we we can just mount somewhere. So it's a separate system.
Oh,
But on these boxes, they use Deutsch connectors, and I was wondering if anybody knows of a box that uses like the MTD. Like the price difference in connectors is bananas. The MTD connectors are like 50 cents a piece, and the pins you can get like 25 pins for $1.50. Whereas Deutsch, the connectors are going to cost you 10, 20 bucks, and then each of the pins are $1 a piece. So, if anybody has any suggestions on that?
yeah.
I can't think of any boxes that already have connectors built in, but
Yeah,
Sorry.
not. I also don't have any idea of having a box that has things built in. But my approach uh, to boxes has always been make a hole and shove all the USB cables in, and then yeah, uh, try to make it as much as dependent on USB rather than single wires, because single wires have a tendency to just get loose. USBs don't get loose, so that's what has been my approach until now. But yeah.
The other comment I would make, Matt, is, I mean, you can see on the existing lawn tractor, right? Molex seems to have gotten the contract to provide all of their connectors, although there's not a box per se. Um, those are, you know, as you said, dirt cheap. Anything else, Sohin, you wanted to comment on?
Mm, I don't think so. That's all I had. I'm looking forward to. If, I talked to Matt earlier about getting uh, a community started here in West Lafayette with Purdue here and so many engineers around. I'm hopeful that we'll get some interest uh, in people trying wanting to contribute to open source. I also found out GitHub started a program that is basically you can donate to GitHub developers to keep an open source project going, which is pretty cool. And the other thing that has been on my mind is yeah, this is unrelated, but NASA just announced that they're gonna uh, open up the ISS to the public for travel, like for travel. So if you want to travel up to the International Space Station, you can do that. So it's yeah, I just follow ISS for fun, and it's interesting. It's already way past this end of life cycle, so it's a pretty smart capitalistic move there.
Space tourism. Did they give you a cost? Is it 10 million for a weekend on ISS?
Probably, but they're mostly focusing on more commercial uses. So like making films or something. Like if you want to go up there and make a film, like if some film person wants to do that, they can do that. So I don't know. Uh, but there's some other companies like Blue Origin, or there's Virgin Atlantic or Virgin Galactic. I don't know, but they're doing something on for commercial space travel. I don't know. It's $1 million though. If you want to go out there and circle the moon and come back or something, I don't know. But I know they're gonna do something about that. It's just interesting uh, how such research projects end up into commercial spaces like that after years of uh, service.
Revenue generating opportunity. I mean, the Richard Branson, he was absolutely focused on space tourism. So, but I thought it was $250,000 for whatever, maybe a 15-minute ride. That was up and back.
Yeah, that's Virgin. So maybe, yeah, I don't know. I haven't. Yeah, it's not. I feel like it's still far fetched. Uh, I would just look at the price and I'm like, okay, thanks, but no, not interested. So I would stop reading at that. So
Matt, anything else on your mind today?
Same thing, different day.
I had a question. What are people powering your Raspberry Pis with? Are you still using the USB charging batteries, or did you figure out some way to tie it into your main 12-volt supply? Or I think Al had that USB hub that you put in 12 volts and then it was powering his stuff. What are you doing, Matt? Are you still using that other battery? Or do you have another kind of power supply going into that?
I'm using a BEC, so 12 to 5 volt converter.
Was that specifically for like a Raspberry Pi, or was it just a general purpose type thing?
Just general purpose. I had it from another project.
I was trying to decide on my one. I've got that Jetson Nano. If I put that in instead of a Raspberry Pi, either one of those wants a 5-volt supply, so I got to come up with that somewhere. And of course, quickest thing is plug in a USB charging battery and run it that way. But you can buy all these little switching converters that'll convert, a higher voltage down to 5 volts. Or I might put one of those that general purpose power supply from minibox.com, where they've got you can put in whatever your engine or your whole supply voltage is. So I think it says it'll run from 6 volts up to like 36 volts or something. I can put that onto the 12-volt battery and then generate a stable 12 volts coming out. And then after that, I could put one of those little 5-volt converters, like a step-down converter to run that. And I'm thinking that box might also give me more noise immunity too, because it's, somebody smart went to the trouble to design the whole thing to work in a car. So it's probably give you a much better stable output coming out of it. So I was just curious what people are doing on that.
One more time, Jeff, the stable one that you think somebody well engineered, what was that one?
It's from minibox.com, and that might be mini with a dash in there. It's that one. We've used it on several projects. Let me see if I can pull that up here. I think it is this one. So let me go. So I think it's that one, and share. And basically, it was designed so you could put like a small computer in your car. People were doing like audio projects, where you'd have a fancy audio play in your car, or just a computer to do whatever, say you're tracking GPS or whatever. And this little module you plug in, it was a $60 module. What was the price? Yeah, it's around $60 and another $5 for the case. And we put it on our tractor because every time we'd start the engine, the battery would droop down to about 9 volts, and all of our industrial things say they run from 9 to 36 volts, but that was a low enough thing they would drop out. So by putting this in between, it'll run all the way down to 6 volts, and that gives you a stable 12 volts in coming out of the thing. So it's just another way to get around this stuff. I know Kyler found some stuff on eBay or Amazon that basically was doing the same thing, where you hook it to your battery supply on your vehicle, and then it puts out a stable voltage. And they were, it comes in some kind of a metal box that a potted type thing. You just wire it up and you use it. So again, there's various ways to do this, and I'm still just toying with the idea of how to get the right way to make this stuff work. And this thing's also programmable to some extent. It's supposed to be smart enough that when you turn your key on, it's supposed to recognize you turned your ignition on, and then it can send a startup pulse to your computer and boot the computer up. And then when you turn the engine off, it's smart enough that it says, "Oh, the ignition has gone away," and then you can either have it wait so many seconds or whatever, and then power the computer down. It can also send a pulse to the computer to essentially hit the on-off button. So if you've got Linux running, it sends a pulse and says, "I just hit the power button," and Linux will say, "Oh, well, somebody just requested a shutdown," and Linux will actually do a shutdown. And then it's got a timer that like 30 seconds or 60 seconds later, you can power everything down. So it's just a more elaborate gadget.
Are those features that you need? Like, do you need to turn on the Raspberry Pi when you put the switch on? Because what we've been using is a 12 to 5 converter from Topson, and this has been a great. It's just $10. It's a small brick. Like it can fit in in the palm of your hands, and it's like this size, and you just put 12 volts in, and you get 5 volts out. And they also have different uh, voltages and different wattage, so current capacities, and it worked really nicely. It's robust, is what I would say.
And your question about, do you need those extra features? Well, it depends on what stage of development you are. When you're doing prototyping stuff, people say, "Well, I'll just turn on this switch and turn on this switch, and then boot up Linux, then go into the command line and type this," and it takes you half an hour to get all the stuff set up. When you go to shut it down, you got to go through that whole process. Eventually, if you want to get to the point where your thing is completely autonomous, you just want to be able to walk up, turn the switch on, and have it activate everything and boot everything up and be smart enough to run. And then when you get ready to shut it down, you just turn off the main power switch and walk away, and it'll be smart enough to shut down all the electronics, shut down all the sensors, kill your operating system, and then kill the main power. So eventually those kind of things become useful to have. But if you're just prototyping, it doesn't really matter too much. You can get away with anything you want at that point.
Yeah, our goal was to make it work. So that's, if you want to just make it work, that's the cheapest way to do it. It's really robust, though. I would say it was fun using it.
Looks very cool. I'm focused on transmission control.
Do you have your encoders installed, Al?
No, I haven't spent any time on those. I have them. I mean, they're sitting on the shelf, but one layer at a time. Okay, guys. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Well, everyone have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
You too. See ya.